Hi, welcome to my talk. My name is Ben Andrew, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about looking after the RSPB's image. I am the RSPB's picture researcher. That's the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, and I'm also a wildlife photographer in my spare time. This is often how you might find me when out in the field, knee deep in a river somewhere, probably photographing something like a damselfly, or I might be again waist deep in a pond or a reed bed, photographing frogs as they go about their spawning, or up close with a hornet's nest to try and capture the those insects going in and out of their nest. So yeah, that's me. I'm a wildlife photographer, as I said. Anything from birds, mammals, insects, reptiles. I absolutely love, and my passion is wildlife photography, and I've been doing it since about 2007. So it's been an absolute kind of passion of mine and a joy of mine to be kind of out in mostly in UK nature, capturing what I can, but also every now and then going abroad. But as I said, I work at the RSPB, and this is the RSPB's headquarters. This is the lodge in Bedfordshire, on a beautiful, crisp winter's day. I didn't start the RSPB until 2012, working in the supporter services team, and then in 2016 I moved into my current role, which is picture researcher. I'll explain a little bit more about that role in a minute. But yeah, the lodge is a beautiful place to work, and the RSPB is a great organisation, whether it's in winter or whether it's on one of these beautiful summer days where the heathland is just that gorgeous kind of purple colour. However, for the last 18 months or so, I have been working from home, and this is my usual working environment with two children in my kitchen. So it's been a bit different the last 18 months, but hoping to get back to the office soon. So as I said, yeah, my role at the RSPB is picture researcher. So my main priorities are to kind of source imagery for the organisation for any kind of job, whether it's a big kind of job like a big report or a big presentation we're doing, or whether it's just sourcing an image for an email or the website or something like that. So my main role is looking after the kind of picture research side of things, but I also manage our photographic library, which is called RSPB Images. I'll move on and talk about that later. I also kind of oversee generally our kind of other photographic needs, whether that's commissioning photo shoots or kind of dealing with freelance photo requests, buying in stock imagery from elsewhere, or even looking at things like to do with the law surrounding photography and consent forms and things like that. So all things photography at the RSPB is my role, and it's great that we've still got a photographic department to talk about. The RSPB has always been a very visual organisation, ever since we produced our first charity Christmas card. So this is that very Christmas card that we produced, and we were one of the first charities, if not the first charity, to produce a Christmas card. And obviously from that moment on, the idea of putting birds onto something and then selling that product, to try and raise money or gain membership or to kind of engage with our audience has always been at the forefront of our mind, all the way up until when we started our membership magazine. And it was probably around the sort of 1970s or so that we started kind of thinking a little bit more visually, a little bit more photographically as well. So this is Birds magazine. This was our quarterly membership magazine, which is now turned into something called Nature's Home. And Birds magazine was famed for always having a very big picture of a bird on the front cover. In the end, the Birds magazine front covers were a full bleed image of a bird, and those images were very prestigious, and photographers were extremely proud to have their image on the front cover of Birds magazine, and the images often sold very well off the back of being on the front cover. So as I say, we've always been a very visual organisation. We've always had a design team poring over images left, right and centre for our magazines and our other kind of visual materials, and kind of making sure that any image choices were very well thought through. The images were impactful and were very important. And alongside being a very visual organisation, we've obviously always had a image library of sorts. And that would have been anything from, originally sort of a nice slides and things like that, obviously moving more into a digital world as the kind of technology progressed. But we've always put photography and having an image library with high importance in the RSPB. And it was around 1998 that we just developed something called RSPB Images, and that's the library that I now oversee. So we were the first, one of the first UK digital photo libraries, and it was developed as part of the RSPB's strategy for collating and collecting imagery. Also, we manage the library as a commercial enterprise, as a business, representing photographers, selling their work to other organisations and other publications and things like that. But it also acted very much as an archive for our organisation. So it's now my job to oversee RSPB Images, everything from making sure that the website is functioning, to selecting the imagery to go on to RSPB Images, so going through various photo edits a year, and providing critiques to our photographers that contribute, and generally dealing with external sales or inquiries and things like that. So my job is basically, as well, the RSPB Images takes up a large chunk of my job, and RSPB Images is a big thing. It's we represent around, or just over 70 wildlife and landscape photographers, most of them from the UK, but some from Europe as well. There's definitely over 100,000 digital images on there. There's probably closer to about 130,000 now, digital images. And we upload around 2,000 images 6 times a year. So we have a bank of wildlife and landscape photographers, as I explained, a diverse bunch that kind of do all kinds of different types of photography, and we invite them to send us their work 6 times a year in these bi-monthly photo edits, and then it is my role to sort of go through their imagery and make a selection. And obviously they all contribute slightly different things. So as I say, we've got landscape photographers, we've got photographers that specialize in macro photography, we've got photographers that specialize in birds, photographers that do a lot of nocturnal and kind of flash photography and things like that. And so we've got a good range of photographers all contributing slightly different things to the library, which is great. When we first started RSPB Images, we were very much known as a sort of bird on stick library. So if you were a magazine or a book publisher or something like that, and you wanted a great image of a bird on a stick, then it was RSPB Images you came to. And obviously completely understandable. We were known for we're a bird organisation, a bird charity, and therefore our image collection centred around that, and we very much kept it to sort of very bird centric, bird on sticks type pictures, no frills, nothing too creative. It was all about kind of making sure that we had a good bank of the full range of species that inhabit the UK. And obviously over time we've developed and developed our style a bit more, and I'll talk to you a bit later about how our imagery kind of needs and imagery styles developed. But as you can see here, we're still very much this is much more a new image now, but we're still very much a bird on stick kind of library. We've still got the full range of UK birds in all of their sort of classic habitats, but we've shifted our kind of the kind of image needs over a little bit to kind of embody those species a little bit more, be a bit more creative, and kind of inspire our audiences a little bit more. So the birds still might be on sticks, but the habitat is thought about a lot more, the lighting, the creativity, the sense of atmosphere. And that goes right through the organization now. We've actually got like a kind of photographic guide at the RSPB. So we have a brand book which kind of guides how guides how our creative teams work, the style they need to be using, everything from sort of fonts to kind of color schemes, color palettes, and things like that. And that brand book also has a section on photography as well, and how to use photographs and where to use them and the types of photographs we need and things like that. So we're constantly looking at the way we use photography as an organization and how we can get the very best out of photography to kind of make the most impact. Photography, we know, can inspire people to volunteer for us, donate to us, support us in other ways, and it's important we use photography in the right way. And we do use a lot of photography. So here's a few examples of the RSPB making use of photography. It can be anything from an envelope that we're sending out in the post to try and entice people to take part in something. Like here's, for example, a raffle, and so on the a printed envelope that we need to put the right image on the front cover or on the front of this envelope to kind of get people's interest. Here's the reception area of the lodge, and obviously we change the imagery regularly in the reception area. It's all backlit using specialist lighting with the aim to try and when visitors come into the RSPB, they know exactly what kind of organization we are and what we're all about. This is one of our members weekends, so this is one of our big events attended by thousands of RSPB members. And again, we've got a big screen and it's all very visual, lots of great big photographs kind of selling our points and talking about what we're talking about at that time, what work we're doing. As explained earlier on, we've also still got a membership magazine, and the front cover image is just as important now as it always has been. We shifted slightly from the name of the magazine changed, and it wasn't the front cover image wasn't just all about a picture of a bird. It became a lot more about landscapes and other species, and obviously a lot more text on the front covers now than there used to be. But the front cover image is still incredibly important to us, and we still have a creative team that spend hours drawing up different concepts for the front cover. And inside the magazine too, double page spreads play a very an important part inside the magazine, and the images that accompany these articles need to have impact and need to be kind of work well with the text and spread across it in a double page spread. We've also got a range of trading products as well, calendars, diaries, books, cards, Christmas cards, things like that, and other kind of trading products. And all of these products make use of our own library, so they all make use of RSPB Images as well. So for a photographer that is attached to RSPB Images, the advantage to those photographers are that they have a constant client that is looking at their imagery. We're blessed in the fact that we've got, say, 60 to 70 or so photographers that are out there day to day taking photos of wildlife. They're doing that as part of their job or as part of their hobby. Most of them are professional, though, so they're doing it as part of their job. And then they're submitting those images to us. So it's almost like we have an army of photographers out there photographing the very thing that we need the most, which is pictures of UK wildlife. And the advantage to those photographers are that we don't stop talking about UK wildlife, and therefore, our first port of call is always RSPB Images, and therefore they've got a constant client constantly buying in their images. So although those images are hosted on something called RSPB Images, we still pay for them. We we're not an organization that looks for cheap ways out in terms of photography. We don't we don't want to use, we value photography, we value photographers. So the photographers that we represent on RSPB Images, we pay for their imagery. And I'll say in turn, they've got a regular supplier. Obviously, we try and sell their images externally too, but obviously the external market is a very difficult market now. And we struggled over the years to compete with the likes the sort of micro stock sites that are offering wildlife images now at next to nothing, or with the rise of digital technology and the internet, there's a lot of people online now giving away their photography for free. which does make it more difficult for our photographers to earn those external sales. But they always know internally they've got the RSPB as a constant customer. And obviously look at these trading products, things like the diaries and the calendars are reoccurring. You know, that every year we're producing an owl's calendar or a birds of prey calendar or something like that, and therefore we need new images every single year for those diaries and calendars and things. In terms of what we look for when it comes to the RSPB stock library, it's clear that we look for lots of different things, and over the years, as I said, we've developed our style, we've developed our image needs, and now we look for a whole range of imagery or types of imagery or style of imagery, and there's not one photographer that can meet all those needs, but having a collection of photographers means we can kind of tick all the boxes we need. So first and foremost, it's always important for classic pictures of birds. You know, that we'll never stop talking about birds, we'll never stop working for birds on protecting them and as a charity, and that therefore we constantly need images of birds. And you know, there's nothing more classic than something like a robin in snow on a spade handle or something like that. It's got great commercial appeal, but it's also you know, it's also a very good, just simple bird image, and those commercial kind of images are still some of our best selling on the library. And it seems a bit cheesy and it might be a bit silly, but some of the most cutest wildlife pictures, or the most cliched pictures, those with kind of a real seasonal feel to them, you know, so something like this ladybird here on a daffodil in spring, or a young frog about to go into hibernation in a, you know, in a conker, you know, in autumnal colors. These classic commercial images do very well for us in terms of not only engaging our audience and making people fall in love with nature, but also from a sales point of view, they do very well for greetings cards and front covers of things like calendars and diaries and things. So there's not often a time where you can't beat one of these kind of classic kind of commercial images with cute wildlife doing cute things. Or even, you know, when the wildlife does something a little bit comical, or, you know, has a funny look to it or something like that, or just stands out and kind of has real kind of eye contact with the person looking at the image. You know, these images do very, very well. And we're constantly looking for wildlife photographers to be contributing these kind of commercial style, engaging images. Of course, it's not the only style we look for, though, and we need everything from, you know, action photography. So over the years, I am being asked more and more for photos of more than one bird or more than one animal in the photo, and interaction, birds doing things, whether that's mating, fighting, courting. It's you know, or there's a big flock of birds or something like that. It's important that these wildlife images don't just stick to a single bird doing kind of nothing. It's some actions, whether, you know, puffins fighting here or black grouse lecking, and especially if you can put them in the context of, you know, the mountains behind or something like that. It's important that we have these images that show kind of behavior and have a bit of impact and a bit of power. And obviously, if you can combine that with some incredibly nice conditions. So here's a single bird, but it's in absolutely beautiful kind of frosty morning, or you've got a pair of grebes here courting in a fiery kind of warm misty morning lake. And again, a pair of stags, red deer stags, locking antlers on a hillside with that dramatic sky in the background. You know, if you can combine action and behavior with kind of atmosphere, then that's exactly what we want. These powerful images will draw people in and get their attention. Over the years, though, we've been looking at how can we add images to our collection that take a familiar subject and show them in a completely different way. And it is important to kind of look for our photographers to keep evolving and thinking about new ways to photograph wildlife. So here's a seal colony. You know, most photographers would be photographing the seal colony down at eye level on the beach itself. But is there anything wrong with getting in a plane or using a drone and going above the seals, as long as you're not disturbing them, and getting a different viewpoint? And it's the same for lots of species, you know, frogs courting in a pond. Can you do one of that kind of some split level photography, or go completely underwater to photograph a mallard duck? Even taking the angle to the extremes and something like this kingfisher going into its nest, just photographing it directly below it. You know, we are pushing our photographers to look at you know, how they photograph wildlife, and can they do it from in a completely different way, from different angles, and kind of make people think a little bit more about what they're looking at, and kind of make people kind of question everything to do with, you know, there's, you know, wildlife, and showing them a new angle on things. And we've got plenty of examples here, tawny owl here, or a heron taking a, you know, with a wide angle lens, again at water level, maybe remotely fired using a trigger. This technology is allowing this sort of photography to happen more and more now, and it's great that we can add these to our collections. And it's the same goes for photographing things at either dusk, dawn, or even at night time. We encourage the use of kind of creative thinking, and if you can do it carefully and you can do it safely, then you can light up a subject at night time and not alter its behavior or not affect it or harm it. Then again, nighttime photography or photography at low light conditions is can have its impact too, and it can also obviously allow you to photograph species such as badgers that you wouldn't normally get during the daytime. We've also not shied away from urban wildlife photography as well. We know that a lot of our audiences now are living in urban areas, and a lot of their interactions with wildlife will come in these urban areas. They might not have a nature reserve or a national park on their doorstep, and so there's nothing wrong with looking at those species that inhabit our cities and our towns, and including those images in our collection too. It's important that people you know, understand that wildlife does exist in and around where we live, and it's not something too far flung that you have to go miles away to see. And so any of these rare urban wildlife opportunities are you know, we embrace. As I mentioned before, we're also absolutely happy to have landscape images in our collection. Again, not just our own nature reserves, but the beautiful wild places in the UK. Again, sometimes it's the need is not for a species picture, but it's for a whole landscape, or transporting somebody to somewhere special. And so therefore, you know, landscape images play a large part in our library now. Over the years, we've taken on specialist landscape photographers to get amazing pictures like this aurora, or a misty woodland, or a lovely poppy field. It's not just about kind of getting you know, lovely pictures of species. It's also about kind of the landscapes and the habitats that they live in. And we've not shied away from international species either. We welcome our photographers, to send in images of species that they're finding abroad, species they find on their travels. You know, we might not mention them as an organization as much, but they still hold value in terms of external sales. And obviously some of these species may become part of the RSPB's communications down the line if we do some work overseas or in overseas territories and things like that. So in no way do we shy away from species that are living in another part of the world. It doesn't have to be UK species directly. Finally, I think it's important to mention that we also now have a growing emphasis on images that tell stories as well, images that show people and wildlife, images that show the connection between wildlife and people, and also the people that are doing work for wildlife as well. For many years, the RSPB have mentioned species, and we've shown lovely pictures of those species or the habitats they live in, but we've kind of ignored the people that are doing the work to help those species, or the people that are just simply falling in love with those species. So we've got a growing emphasis now on storytelling, kind of journalistic imagery that kind of shows the good and the bad. So, you know, species that are recovering and where scientists are doing all they can to help them, you know, but also species that are under threat. There's nothing wrong with showing the threats to wildlife, and it's important that we do highlight that there are threats to wildlife as well. It would be awful of us to paint a picture as an organisation that that everything is rosy and everything is right in the world, when so many animals are under threat from, you know, things like plastic pollution, global warming, climate change, human population, things like that. So we want to show these kind of threats as well, but obviously we also show some of the successes and some of the techniques that people go to help bring back species almost from the brink of extinction. And whether that's, you know, big scientific projects, or individuals that do all they can to help a single species, then we will show those pictures, and we want those pictures, and we want pictures of people enjoying nature and out in nature too. So people on our nature reserves, and you know, a great diversity of people enjoying nature and being out in nature as well. So from my point of view, the RSPB is a organisation that has always put photography at the forefront, and we've simply evolved our thinking of you know, what makes a good photo, what makes an important photo over the years, and we've kind of moved on from simplistic scientific bird imagery to an organisation that embraces all manner of photographs, all types of photography, styles, techniques and things like that. We've embraced modern technology, but we are also an organisation that just simply values photography as well. We value the photographers, we value the price of an image. We don't, you know, we know how long it takes to get the right shot, the money spent on equipment, time, travel, you know, everything that people go through to get those images. And we know how important it is, and we do not play that down in any way, because we know that if we select the right image, it can tell a great story, it can garner a lot of support for that species or that habitat, and it can garner a lot of support for our organisation too, and that's what we'll continue doing. RSPB Images will continue to operate, and it will continue to hopefully you know, provide income to professional wildlife photographers. Unfortunately, we haven't taken on any new photographers for a while, and the simple reason for that is that the money that we have in wildlife photography, you know, the money that's there is not of, you know, not what it used to be. And so we haven't recently taken on any new wildlife photographers because we simply do not want to devalue the ones we've got. My job is to focus on those photographers we have at the moment and bringing in the best income for them that I possibly can. But hopefully in the coming years, we will start to take on new wildlife photographers to our library, look at those that can offer us something different and provide us with a different type of photo than we've already got, and bolster our collection even more. So do keep an eye out. If you're a wildlife photographer and you're interested in becoming a contributor to RSPB Images, keep an eye out, because I'm sure our website will update people on that, and you can always get in touch with me at the RSPB if you want to ask any further questions. So thanks for listening. Really appreciate you being interested in the RSPB and RSPB Images and our photography here and my work with the RSPB. And obviously, if you have any questions afterwards, please do get in touch with me. My email address is simply ben.andrew@rspb.org.uk. Thanks a lot. Bye.